Hey and welcome IGCSE students. We're talking about completing the square today. This is a topic that a number of students have difficulty with, so you might want to watch very carefully. Completing the square is a useful technique because it can help us solve quadratic equations. It's actually how the quadratic formula is derived, and it also can help us find the minimum or maximum point of a curve for a quadratic. So the technique is basically this. Let's look at the first one. I've got number 1i here, I think it is, x plus 22x. What we do is we take 1x and we add half of the coefficient in front of the x term. And then we put brackets around them, we square that, and then we subtract the square of this number here, the 11, so that subtract 121. Now what happens if you actually work out what that ends up being, is you're going to get x squared plus 22x plus 121, and then there's that minus 121, which is equal to x squared plus 22x. So it's another way of writing the x squared plus 22x. Okay, so that's how we complete the square, and later on we'll look at why we complete the square. Now sometimes it can get a bit harder. For example, this next one, m, we're going to have to halve 7. So I'm just going to go 7 over 2, which is 3.5 of course, and then I'm going to square that, and then I'm going to subtract 7 over 2 squared, which is 49 over 4, because 7 squared is 49 and 2 squared is 4. And I would leave that at that. Now, there are other types where you can see there's a coefficient in front of the x squared. So what we first do is we rewrite it, 3, and then I just put a square bracket here, x squared plus 4x. And then I go, alright, now I can complete the square within these square brackets. So I'm going to half that 4, so it becomes x plus 2 squared. Then I'm going to subtract 2 squared, which is 4. And then I put my square brackets again, and then I will expand that out. So I'll get 3 bracket x plus 2 all squared minus, and then 3 times minus 4 is 12. We'll do the same thing with this next one here. Again, I would use my square bracket, so I'm going to go 2 into x squared, and then it will become minus 5 over 2 x. And then I'm going to complete the square, so within those square brackets. Okay, so that will give me x minus, now half of 5 over 2 is 5 over 4, right? So half 5 over 4, and I'm going to square that and then subtract the square of 5 over 4, which is 25 over 16. So I've squared the top and bottom there. And then I put my square brackets, and then the last step is to expand out. So I'm going to get 2x minus 2 bracket x minus 5 over 4 all squared, subtract 25 over 16. Right, now the next one I've got to write in the expression in this form, which is just a completing the square form. So I take this first bit here and I complete the square with that. So I'm going to go x plus 5 squared minus, now 5 squared is 25, minus 25. So that bit there is the blue bit that I've circled, and then I've got this bit here which is the minus 3, and I just stick that on the end, and then I can just simplify that whole thing, and that will give me x plus 5 all squared minus 28, and that would be that one. Now let's move down a little bit. We've got a few more here. We've got to make x the subject of these equations. So what I would do here is go x, I'm going to complete the square on the left hand side, minus 9 equals b. So that would be my first step. Then I'm going to pull that minus 9 across to the other side. So it'll be 9 plus b. And then I'm going to square root both sides. And then I'll get plus or minus the square root of 9 plus b. And then I will get x is equal to 3 plus or minus the square root of 9 plus b. Same kind of approach could be done to b there. Now I think moving on to another exercise here, this time we're using completing the square to solve some equations. So let's do this first one, 1g. I'm going to complete the square by halving that 20, so it'll become 10, so I'll have x minus 10 all squared. Then I've got to subtract off 100. Now that, what I've just done there is this blue bit. Then the red bit is this minus 33, so I'm going to chuck that on. And that's all equal to 0. Now let's move everything across to the other side. So we get x minus 10 all squared is equal to 133. And so x is equal to, sorry, not x is equal to, let's go x minus 10 is equal to, I'm square rooting both sides at this point, plus or minus the square root of 133. So x is equal to 10 plus or minus the square root of 133. And I could work those out in my calculator and perhaps give them to 3 significant figures, but that's the exact 2 answers that you can get there. Okay, 2D, another example of this. So I'm going to complete the square by going x minus 5 over 2. I'm going to square that, and then I'm going to subtract 25 over 4. And then so the blue bit that I've just circled is the bit that I've just written, and then this pink bit here plus 5, and that should be all equal to 0. Then next line, move everything across to one side except the squared bracket. So I've got minus 25 over 4 plus, what is that, plus 5, that's negative 5 over 4. So when we bring it across the other side, will be equal to positive 5 over 4, I think. Then we square root both sides, so we get x minus 5 over 2 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 5 over 4. And then to get my answer, I move that 5 over 2 across the other side, so it becomes positive. So it'll be 5 over 2 plus or minus the square root of 5 over 4. And then number 3 is a similar idea, but we're going to have to first of all use those square brackets again. So I factorize out that 2, and I'll just work with that bit that I'm circling in the blue, and I'll leave this minus 6 out here, equals to 0. Then I'm going to complete the square in the square bracket, so it'll be x plus 2 all squared minus 4, close square brackets, minus 6 equals 0. Then we're going to expand everything out, so I get 2 bracket x plus 2 all squared, minus 8, and then I've got this minus 6 over here. We pull everything across to the other side, so we're going to end up with, my first step would be equal to 14, and then x plus 2 all squared, I'm going to divide by 2, so I get 7 on the other side. So x is plus 2. Take the square root of both sides, should be equal to plus or minus the square root of 7. So x is going to be equal to 2 plus or minus the square root of 7. Okay, one more here. So 5e, you can see that I've got this strange looking thing here. So what I would first do is times everything by x to get rid of that nasty 2 over x. So it'll just become 2 and then 5x squared here. And then I'd bring everything over to one side, so it'd be 5x squared minus 8x plus 2 equals 0. Now, you could complete the square and solve this. Personally, at this point, I would use the quadratic formula because it would be easier. But if you were asked to complete the square, you could. It'd just be pretty nasty. So I'll show you how I'd do that. 5 into x squared minus 8 over 5 plus 2 equals 0. Now I'm going to halve in my square brackets the 8 over 5, so that would become 8 over 10. And then I'm going to square that. Hang on, have I done that right? 8 over 5 times, yeah, halve it. Yeah, and then I'm going to square that, so that's minus 64 over 100 plus 2 equals to 0. And then I expand it out, so I should get something like this. And that will become negative 64 over 20, I think, plus 2. And then we could rearrange and solve. So it's not a very nice one. I just wouldn't bother using that method for that, because it would be much easier to use the quadratic formula. Okay, this last one here, I think it's the last one. Yeah, it is the last one. We're going to complete the square to find the minimum value. Okay, so what we do for these is we'll just complete the square in the normal way. So I'm going to take out that factor of 2, which is this blue box bit that I've drawn. Then I've got this plus 5 left over here, so I'll put plus 5 here. Then I am going to go x minus 1 all squared minus 1, so I've completed the square. And then I'm going to expand that, so I get 2x minus 2 bracket x minus 1 all squared minus 2 plus 5, so final answer is 2x minus 1 squared plus 3. Now let's say this is a function, so it's y is equal to this. Y is equal to this. Well, what we can do is we can find the lowest value of y. What is the lowest value of y? When is it going to occur? Well, start by thinking about values of x that you can put in here. When you put in any number in here and square it, this is always going to be positive or 0. Okay, because you square any negative number and it's a positive number. So the lowest value you can get for y, i.e. the minimum value, is going to be when that bracket is equal to 0. So x must be equal to 1 at the minimum point, because 1 minus 1 is 0. And therefore, what will y be? Y will be equal to, well, if this bracket here is 0, 2 times 0 is 0, so y must be equal to 3. So the coordinates of the minimum point of this curve will be 1, 3. And I think we'll talk about this a little bit more in the next exercise.